Ciao guys, welcome to another episode of the Personal PR Show. And today we're here with our resident guest, Portia. Portia, hello, how are you?
Hey, Jessica. Hello. Happy Saturday, y'all. What's going on? It's early here. It's 6 o'clock in the morning here in Ohio. It's also snowing outside, which is great. Hey, you know what? We'll roll with it. So I'm excited to be here as always. Super grateful for this opportunity, Jessica. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for making the time, Portia. Like every fourth Saturday of the month, you wake up at 6 or at 5 probably in order to be online with us live at 6 a.m. I don't know how you do it. We're super grateful. And yes, we're super excited to learn from you about podcasting today. So there are so many topics that we can talk about with you. And this month is all about podcasting. And by the way, Portia, before we get started, I would like to welcome Marie-Louise as well, who's here with us on our live on the Personal PR Show. And she says that she doesn't want to miss any of our lives with you, any of our episodes. Right, she's your fan.
That's all right. That's all right. I love fans. Welcome back, Mary Louise. Always an honor to have you with us, join in the conversation. Like they say, what the more the merrier.
Yes, Mary Louise, is there anything that you would like to say before we get started?
No.
Nothing? Okay, cool. But then in a few minutes, not to worry, we will have Q&A with Portia. So I'm going to, Portia, bring you into the spotlight.
Yay.
And then, you know what, I'm bringing myself into the spotlight as well. Yes,
Hey.
and then we'll bring you back. We'll bring you on stage as well when you then ask a question. Anyway, so Portia, let's go. So why are we talking about podcasting today? And precisely the title of today's episode is how to produce your first podcast, right? Exactly. So we're talking to you guys, to the people among you guys who haven't started their show, their podcast yet. This is really podcasting 101 today. Maybe one day Portia will do an episode about advanced podcasting, but today is really the basics of podcasting, right? So why are we talking about podcasting with you?
Oh, Jessica, when I think about my podcasting journey, right? I mean, I started in radio first and then pivoted to podcast second. You know, I think there's so many people who are sitting on great ideas, whether they are an ex-corporate person who wants to take their expertise and turn it into a message for the masses, right? But they keep saying, I'll start tomorrow. Well, how many more tomorrows you gonna let go by before you take that information that you've got and put it out to the masses? Now, I have to say, what I tend to find with people who procrastinate, right? I actually have a live course that I do that's called Procrastinator from Procrastinator to Podcaster, because it's that simple. It doesn't take a lot to produce your own podcast. So I'll go into the technical stuff really quick first. So, of course, when you want to record your own podcast, you need something to record with. You don't necessarily have to have a mic like me and headphones. You can use your smartphone. Our iPhones and all these phones have amazing recording devices. Second thing you need is a digital audio workstation. If you're on Mac, you've got GarageBand, or you can use Audacity. It's free. You also need to have a hosting site. Where is your podcast going to be distributed, right? Are you going to do a video only podcast, right? If you're going to do video only, you can just use YouTube, record through Zoom or use your phone. Hey, either one works. The other thing you need to also carve out time to really, and this is very important, Jessica, what I tell people in their first episode, you want to answer 3 questions. Write this down. You want to answer 3 questions in your first podcast episode. The first thing, you want to tell people who you are. So are you a podcast host? Are you a coach? Are you a nurse who's pivoting into another wellness space? Who are you? Second question you want to answer is, what is the inspiration behind the podcast, right? What was the inspiration that birthed this message that you want to share with the masses, right? For me, with my show, Grew with Portia, with spoiler alert, y'all, Grew with Portia is coming back. Yes, Grew with Portia is coming back after a several month hiatus, but I am bringing my show back sometime soon. So stay tuned, y'all. Grew with Portia is back, where I have individuals come on and share how they found their groove through moments of adversity. So stay tuned for that. Number 3, the other thing you want to answer is what your audience or listeners are going to get out of this podcast, right? That's a key part because, right, Jessica, when you asked me to come on here, right, you talked about your 4 pillars, right? Leadership, those different things. And leadership is big for me, especially in the world that we live in today, where there's so many quote unquote leaders and experts. But realistically speaking, who are the experts? It's us, right? We have the real groundwork experience, right? Of being in the trenches, learning from experience, learning from different people, right? I'm a firm believer. Jessica, you might know this book, The Game of Life by Florence Scovel Shinn.
No,
I
didn't know.
It's an old book, and the book says man is not your enemy, man is not your friend, for man is your teacher, which replicates in my mind that every experience, every person that you meet is someone you can learn from, right?
Yeah.
So you want to keep those 3 things in mind. So I'll repeat them. Number 1, you want to tell people who you are. Second, you want to say the inspiration behind the podcast. Number 3, you want to tell your audience what they're going to get out of it, right? Because why am I going to tune in if you're somebody who wants to talk about cats? If I love cats, oh, cool. We'll talk about cats all day. If we're going to talk about dogs. Cool. I want to learn some tricks from my dog. I have a dog upstairs. His name is Mr. Fletcher Blaze. So we'll leave him up there. But so you want to keep those 3 things in mind when you record your first episode. And I have to also preface this too. Your first episode is not going to be what you think. You're going to be overthinking. You're going to wonder, oh my God, am I talking too much? Am I talking too little? Just go with it, because you learn as you do it. I always, with my podcast clients who I work with, they are on a bi-weekly frequency with me. So they send me 2 episodes a month, and some of them send more. I recommend when you're starting out to do 2 episodes a month or whatever. You don't have to do every single day. You don't. I know, I think it's the One Gratitude podcast. They do a 1-minute gratitude podcast episode every day. Now, if you got the budget and the time, great, you can. But if not, I wouldn't worry too much about it. So that's kind of like the more technical things. The other thing you want to do is take notes, like listen back to your recordings. That's an important thing, because when I hosted my show, I always listen back to my recordings all the time. I give myself feedback like, oh, I could have asked this follow-up question. Oh, I could have done this. I could have asked that. So you learn as you grow and listen to other podcasts, right? That's where you get inspiration. I think we tend to think that we're plagiarizing by listening to other podcasts and taking ideas, but no, that's how you learn. That's how you grow. So you take it as a leverage tool, but not necessarily replicate identically what this other podcaster or show host is doing. The other thing that I like to share with people, create your format, right? You don't have to do an interview style podcast. You can start off solo. I have 2 hosts currently who are only solo podcasts where it's only them who's talking, and they do amazing. And I've seen their growth. I mean, they started with me last year in August, September. And I mean, their downloads are like that. Their audience really loves their content. And, this kind of segues into, so that's the basics of when you're producing your first podcast. Also, before you pick a name, make sure you Google it, make sure that it's available, and, get the domain or buy the LLC for it. Because if you want to monetize off of your podcast, you want to make sure that you have all the proper documentation and that. I tell all my clients to do that with their podcast names, get the LLC or, EIN or whatever, because you just never know. You want to be covered in that sense. The other thing, record in a quiet room. Record in a quiet room. Jessica, I cannot tell you the number of times that I've had to send, and I'm not going to name drop some of my hosts, but I've had to send their shows back and say, you need to re-record this because there's too much noise. And when I say a microphone picks up noise like that, it does. I mean, one of my hosts, when I was listening back to their shows, I could hear a dog barking. And I said, nope. I said, re-record this. You can re-record at night. If you have a house that's kind of not noise friendly, do it in the closet. Do it in the closet. Closet is, a lot of people start off, believe it or not, Jessica, doing their podcast episodes in their closet. They do. So I highly recommend always do it in a quiet space, no matter what.
Yeah. Oh my God, this has been amazing. I've been taking so many notes. And Portia, I see that Marie-Louise has been taking notes like crazy as well. Wow. Portia, do you think that we can already bring Marie-Louise to the stage to ask you questions? Or is there anything that you would like to mention before we get into Q&A?
I want to talk about being a field producer really quick, Jessica, because this is what I do now. So I currently have 7 shows that I manage right now. And number one, when you are a podcast producer, I have to say this, and some people might disagree with me, but I recommend if you're going to be a producer, you need to have sat in the hosting seat and the guest seat and the audience seat enough times to get a feel for a podcast production, right? Because I don't recommend people just jumping right into being a producer of podcasts until you understand the dynamics, because the purpose of a producer, a field producer, is to bridge the gap between the audience and the host. That is what a producer does, a good producer. And Jessica, you know my background, I used to be a television producer. So I've kind of pivoted that format and applied it in the podcast space. So when you're a field producer, I recommend number one, be organized. You have to be organized. Managing all these shows, I have to know when my hosts, their shows are going to air, right? Making sure that I book enough guests. I'll use one of my clients for an example. One of my clients, I do all of their show bookings for them. I communicate with their guests because they're a busy executive. So, I do their show notes. So you really have to be organized. You really have to know their style of what they like to interview, right? You don't just want to pick just any random guest. No, you have to be very intentional with knowing your host style, knowing what they like to talk about, really mirroring when you're reaching out to different guests, being able to communicate with them and convince them to come on the show, right? Like one of my hosts, I'll share this, we had the founders of the Black and Missing Foundation on one of their shows. And I was able to communicate to them like, hey, this would be a good platform for you considering the work that you do in the community. Okay. The other thing that you want to consider when you're field producing, now I produce real time. So I'm actually producing a show later on today. So when I'm producing shows, I'm on the Zoom call with the host and the guest. And while I'm listening in, I'm giving the host different questions to ask the guests because that's how quick my brain works with follow-up questions. So when you're a producer, this is why I'm telling you, you have to really get your feet wet in all 3 spaces to really build your arsenal. Now, I'm not saying people can't just start right off the bat from producing shows. But to me, to be a good producer, you've needed to occupy those spaces enough and really get a sense of what the messaging and what the outcome that you want for this podcast episode, right? Because I'm telling you, when I get super excited when I produce shows, especially with my hosts because I know them, I know the talent that they bring. I've been able to work with them. I coach them. I've helped to develop them to get to where they are today. So to me, being a field producer is one of the most rewarding careers that I've been able to create for myself, right? Where I started at NBC and now I have my own company where I manage different podcast hosts and different things like that. So really be organized. The other thing, take notes. And I let people shadow me. I do. If people want to ever shadow me and learn my producing style, I'm more than open to it, because I want people to learn, right? It takes skill. It does. You have to really be able to multitask, right? So with my one host, I'm looking at the clock to make sure, okay, we've got 10 minutes left on the clock. You need to ask this last follow-up question. Make sure you promote the guest. And then I'm sending them different questions and things like that through the Zoom chat. So you really have to be quick when you're being a producer. So I'll stop there. I think I've shared a lot in the I told you I was going to be generous. I'm very generous with my time.
Portia, this is more than I expect. I knew already they were going to be generous, but this is even more than what I expected. And I already expected a lot because I know you so well and I love you so much. Oh my God. So many, it's me, Marie-Louise as well. Everybody at home was watching us live on the replay, whatever. Yes. Oh my God. Marie-Louise, let me bring you into the spotlight on stage to in order for you to ask your questions, because I'm sure that you have many.
Yeah, to start off, about the fact that you need to answer 3 questions in your first podcast episode. So the first podcast episode you do on your own, you wouldn't have a guest.
If you can have a guest if you don't want to. It's up to you. I always recommend your first episode be you solo, because people need to know who you are, right? They want to hear your story. And I'll be honest, that's something I did not do when I first started Grew with Portia. Like if you go on my YouTube channel right now, you can still see my first Grew with Portia episodes. I kept them up there. I know some people take their episodes down when they start to reach a certain level. No, I don't. I keep everything because I want to show you the progression in my career. So yeah, you can go on my YouTube channel, Portia the Producer. You can just type in Portia Booker. My first episode, I believe it's titled Angels for Sincere. I believe that's what it's titled. So you can listen to it and then listen to my episodes that have come out since, and you'll see the progression. So I recommend it. I mean, Mary Louise, there's no right or wrong way. There isn't. I just recommend that your first episode, people need to know who you are.
Makes
you
sense.
need to highlight yourself. You need to showcase, this is who I am, y'all. This is the space where I was in this broken space, and I found a way to convert that brokenness into a blessing. I'm gonna say it again. I found a way to convert that brokenness in my life into a blessing. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. And then going into the more technical aspects that are the ones that always scare me. I had a chat with Jessica the other day, and she was saying you can keep it easy, simple at the beginning, and just record with Zoom. So something I'm doing now, and then post it in a Facebook group and post it on YouTube. Create a YouTube channel. Would that work?
Absolutely, yes. 100%. I agree with Jessica. You can keep it definitely simple. Now, I'm somebody who was a little bit of a perfectionist with my show, where I had to listen back to it, edit out the ums, the bums, the sniffles, the coughs, and I still do for my host to this day. Like when you listen to my host shows, pre-production and post-production sound completely different. I can tell you that because I've built on my skills of editing, producing, hosting, sounding, all of that stuff. So yeah, you can keep it simple and keep it short. That's another thing. Here's another tip. Keep it short. Keep your episodes short. And short can be 5 minutes. It just depends on your vocal capacity. Now I know I've had enough, no pun intended, WD-40 on these lungs and these windpipes, so I can talk forever. But if you have not built up your talking and wind capacity, keep it short. Keep it short, because like they say, less is more, right? You want to deliver the value instead of being, no shade on the news business, a talking head, but I have to go there because that's what it seems to have converted to now. But you want to give the value in short bites. Give them the cake. I think I said this before. Give them the cake, because they'll take it and run with it, but keep it short.
And then instead, if one wanted to share the podcast on podcast or Spotify, wherever, then you need to, I guess, buy what you were mentioning, hosting space somewhere.
So there's free hosting sites. Anchor is a free one. There's Riverside FM. I started on Anchor, and then I pivoted to Spreaker, where Spreaker gives me the ability to maintain other shows, and I pay like $25 a month for it, but that's because I have so many shows to manage. It makes it easier in the storage space. But if you're a solo host just starting out, Anchor is one of them. I mean, like Jessica said, it's free to start a YouTube channel. If you're a little camera shy, you don't have to get on camera at first. That's why I say keep it short. Your first episode can be 5 minutes, and then you can grow from there. Very simple. That's why I say less is more.
Like Jessica, the interviews that you do, you only share in your Facebook group and on YouTube, or do you also have a podcast?
No, we don't thus far because we only do low production. But of course, once we are more established and we can grow the team as well, then certainly we will take all of the Zoom recordings and we will translate and we will extract the audio, so to say, and then we'll go and on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Yes, I think
you
we'll
can do that now.
The capacity. Yeah,
Portia? You can do that now too, Jessica, if you want, because I think Spreaker allows you to just drag and drop the video in there, and then it extracts the audio, if I'm not mistaken. So you can. Yeah, Spreaker. Spreaker.
Thank you, Spreaker. Okay.
And it distributes, sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
No, I will just ask Chet to have a look. Yeah, and it distributes?
Yeah, it distributes to all the podcast spaces. So Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all of that, YouTube. So it might save your team in that some time too, Jessica, to put it through there, because it'll go to YouTube too.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so question as well. So when we choose the podcasting platforms that we want to be on, what are the must, let's say, haves? So, for example, is Apple Podcasts super important? Is Spotify super important? Is Google Podcasts maybe a little bit less important, less established? What are the platforms that you would recommend to be on?
So when you pick a hosting site, and I'll use Spreaker as an example, Spreaker automatically distributes to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Obviously, Spreaker has its own distribution list too, Spotify, iHeartMedia. So you want to pick a hosting site that distributes to all the major platforms. You definitely do. Then I would even consider also going towards other podcast sites that aren't necessarily like the big names too. So like in Spreaker, it gives you the option to distribute your podcast to SoundCloud. A lot of people use SoundCloud for like music and stuff. So you just never know, because I know Grew Up Portia is on Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker. Like my show is on, I think, like 10 or 15 different platforms. So, and when you look at your analytics will tell you where in the world your podcast is being listened to the most. Like the last time I looked at mine, even though I haven't hosted shows, people are still downloading my show. And I can see that I have an influx of people from India, from London, and from Canada who listen to my show the most. And I have over 179 episodes of my show. So you want to go kind of the non-traditional route. The other thing I want to add to promoting your podcast, you got to promote it, because if you don't promote it, people aren't going to listen to it. So you can go on Canva, create you a little flyer. I create audiograms for all of my hosts. So an audiogram is a little 2-minute snippet of the actual podcast recording. Now you might need a little bit of audio editing background or software to do it. I use Headliner. Headliner connects to all the major podcast platforms, and you can create your audiogram from there. It brings up the audio track of your podcast, and you can shorten it down to 30 seconds, and then you attach your graphic. If you already have your graphic already loaded into Spreaker for your podcast, it just pull it up. You can add the little audio rings of it looks like you're talking, or the voice boxes, different things like that. And it also has the text. So, because it makes it more interactive and engaging when you can hear a snippet of it, right? So that's another way to promote your podcast.
Certainly. Oh my God, we have to have a part 2 on this. And then a part 3, advanced podcasting. Portia, this has been amazing. And I see that Marie-Louise has another question. I see it on her.
What's the editing software you mentioned?
Sure. I use, if you're on Mac, you can use GarageBand. GarageBand, I have to admit, is a different animal of its own for me. So I personally use Audacity, Audacity, Audacity. And I've used Audacity since I was in college. And Audacity is the most audio to me, audio editing friendly podcast editing software that anybody can use. It's that simple. When you're listening to the audio track, cut, paste, whatever you need to do. Yeah. The other thing I want to add too, when people want to find their podcast music, right? I always tell people you need your own unique sound. I use Pond 5, POND 5, to pull my music, and you buy the licensing agreement and everything, so you can read through and it'll tell you can use this for commercial use or whatever, and that way you don't get like flagged because you already have the licensing agreement that you can use this music for commercial usage. And that's what I have all my podcast hosts do. They go on there and pick their music, and then I mix it and master it for them.
Yeah. Oh my God, this is amazing. I have to tell everything to Cher now, Portia. I've taken notes. I tell her everything. Please check out all of these softwares and platforms and stuff.
Yeah, and Cher can reach out to me too. That's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yes. Oh my God. What a privilege that we have. Yes, certainly we will reach out to you. Marie-Louise, we have 1 more minute before we are done for today. Do you have any other questions for Portia? Or Portia, is there anything that you would like to add? So I leave the stage to you girls.
Yeah, if you have a question, Marie-Louise, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's two different animals, though. If you start off by recording here on Zoom and then posting it on YouTube, if you want to then upgrade and, go on all the major platforms, etc., then I guess you really have to pay more attention to sound quality and things like that.
I recommend that from the bat. You want to get your sound right from the beginning, because I mean, Jessica, you can probably attest to this too. Sound is key. If that the video itself can look completely bad, but if that audio quality is bad too, you want to get that audio right no matter what. And I know some people may disagree with me, but I've listened to podcasts where the video wasn't that appealing, but that audio was crisp. That audio was crisp, and I still listened to it because it was still engaging. I mean, you can hear me perfectly. I have on my full gear and everything like that. So I'm very attentive to audio quality. And you don't necessarily have to, Marie-Louise, if you're still a little camera shy, you could just start off using your iPhone. You can. You can use the voice record on your iPhone and then just upload it from there. Yeah. And just build.
No, I wouldn't say. Actually, I think that having the face-to-face element to it helps me. The only thing is, if I'm starting out real simple recording on Zoom, so I have to. The audio quality won't be probably 100%, but I guess you recommend getting like a good mic and headphones, doing as best I can to have good audio quality, even if I'm doing something real simple. And then,
yeah, you definitely want to have headphones and a mic, because you want to hear yourself. Like, I can hear myself through this. I have a MIDI board. You can't see it, but it's behind my computer where I can manage all my audio levels and everything. You don't have to do all that starting out, but I definitely recommend headphones and a microphone where you can hear yourself.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much for all of your questions, Marie-Louise. It's great to see that you're always so interested in everything that Portia says. And Portia, do you have any final remarks before we send ourselves off, we ship ourselves into the weekend, so to say, and we wait for your next episode? Is there anything that we need to know now?
Yeah, so first of all, thank both of you, Marie-Louise and Jessica, as always. I look forward to these conversations on Saturdays with you. Like, it's truly an honor. When I look at my journey a year ago, I was working a job that I hated, and now I'm literally living the life of my dreams. It just blows my mind. Here's a tip that I want to share with everybody really fast. Yeah. If you're considering a podcast, right, don't be a procrastinator. How many more tomorrows are you going to let go by before you start living your dreams? And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Perfect is out of here. To me, perfect is an excuse of being a procrastinator. Okay. So if you're going to start your podcast, just start today. Start small and have fun with it. I can't tell you the number of doors that podcasting has opened for me. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Just start today.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. And Portia, what do you think? Should we do part 2 next month or in the next few months? Definitely, right? There's so much more. I think we got so much from you, but I think at the same time, for you, from your perspective, we have only been scratching the surface over the past 30 minutes, right? There's so much more coming. And you're so generous, and we're so grateful. Oh my God, this is amazing, guys. Thank you so much, Portia. Thank you, Marie-Louise. And we'll see you very soon for the next episode of the Personal PR Show. And in the meantime, have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Portia. Bye.